Hi everyone, it's me, Danielle, and I'm back. I wanted to talk about fairies and show the drawings that I've done of a bunch of fairies that I've seen, and I've got some cool stories about them. But first, I did want to talk a little bit about, um, you know, I've been so interested in learning how to be clairaudient and, watching a lot of people channeling on different YouTube channels and whatnot. And I still am not hearing, although something did try to kind of get in and take over my ear, and it made my eye go like down and made me real dizzy, and it wasn't able to get in. So, Michael Shaman always teaches me that there are these frequencies that I'm supposed to learn how to translate. And I do feel those. I feel these like waves coming that I don't, it doesn't turn into words in my head or anything. So I think I'm still working on learning how to translate these frequencies. And maybe they'll just be thoughts. Maybe I am doing it and I don't realize it. Um, but I have seen a couple of things that were a little concerning about channeling on YouTube. Like in particular, I saw this gentleman who said that he saw that people are making a lot of money on YouTube channeling. So he decided he was just going to start channeling and opened himself up to trying to channel Arcturians, or maybe they told him that they were Arcturians, but they caused him a lot of harm and grief in his life. And I couldn't sit through um, his multiple videos because, I happen to know that Arcturians are really high vibration and they wouldn't be hurting anyone. They're up there with like angels. They're very high. So, this person opened themselves up to be this channel, and who knows who, started talking to him or hurting him or whatever they were doing. But, he was doing it without any training, um, without any protection, without any discernment. And so I don't know who he's channeled or who's talking to him or what he's hearing. But I did want to talk about, and also, watching him talk about Arcturians that way, you know, if a lot of people are watching that, then, he is making money and he's doing what he wanted to do on YouTube, but I don't think he's doing anything that's very positive. So I wanted to just say real quick about all of the beings that I've encountered, um, is that I've never been asked to worship a being or obey a being. Um, and I've never been asked to trade anything like doing something for them and they'll give me a healing. I had healings by many different beings, and they've always just done them because they were benevolent beings and they've never asked me for anything in return. And I just feel like any of those kind of things might be ways that somebody might learn to discern whether it's really a benevolent being or a high vibrational being or high dimensional being, because I've never had any of these situations. So if somebody's asking you to do anything like that, like obey them or worship them or trade something, then I think that that would be a red flag that I would go, hey, who is this really? Anyways, I wanted to get into some information about my experience with fairies. What's funny is I am in a psychic meetup group, and one of my friends in the group said that he would so much rather deal with a demon than a fairy. And that kind of made me laugh. Um, Demons, like what we call demons, are lower dimensional, lower vibrational, and they are a lot easier to deal with, I would say, as far as if they're negative. Um, because we're higher vibration than them. But the thing is, when I start reading about fairies, most of the stories about fairies are medieval tales that have been passed down through time, and they're like fairies are painted in kind of a bad light. like the story about changelings, fairy folk take away babies and leave their own twisted offspring in their place. There's stories about drownings. There's beings from the Fey dimension that have a taste for human flesh they in these stories, or they're harbingers of doom and death. So basically, the stories that have been passed down from medieval times about the Fae are superstitions. And I think they were to try to explain things like illness and death that were natural, but they didn't understand scientifically at the time. So they're blaming everything on the Fae. Um, what fairies are higher dimension than the third dimension, which is where humans have largely been. So they are definitely more powerful and magical than, our third dimension. And they are really great healers. And they seem highly like tied in and intermingled with nature, plants, and animals. So they really like when we make fairy gardens for them, and they love it when we leave presents and treats for them. They are also very sensitive to the collective consciousness of the planet. So if a large portion of the population are scared of them, fear them, or think they're up to no good, this probably doesn't really help them out. So I have seen here at my house, well, I built a fairy garden and they started coming around and they asked if they could build a dome to protect them from collective consciousness, which I did allow them to do. I gave them permission. And so it took them about a week and I saw it go in. I saw it with my third eye over my property, which is nice because the dome protects me from collective consciousness mostly. And, ETs are affected by collective consciousness. And so it's allowed a lot more ET contacts and it's allowed a lot more beings from the Fae to come onto my property, which, they just like multiplied here. There's like 50 of them now. So one time I have seen um, a fairy with my physical eyes. Usually it's with my third eye, but I did have my cats were trying to get something that was behind the trash can in my bathroom, and I thought it was going to be like a lizard or something when I moved the trash can. But what happened is I moved the trash can, and something white flew up, and it had wings, and it was about the size of a moth. But when it got to my eye level, it just disappeared. And I know I've talked about this before, but I thought I'm just gonna lump all my fairy tales into one video. So it disappeared right before my eyes, and that's how I knew that it wasn't a moth, it was a fairy. So that was the only time I've seen one, though, in physically our dimension. They can make things apport from your house. So I had, when I was at my mom's house and she had a fairy garden there, and I was moving back into my house, this is a couple years ago, my Apple Pencil disappeared just as I was moving. And I asked my daughter if she could see where it was with her third eye, and she walked over to the little fairy garden at my mom's, and she said she could see that it was right there. Now, she didn't reach down and try to grab it, and if she had, she probably would have just pulled it right back into our dimension because this has happened, multiple times, and she can pull things back. But I really needed my Apple Pencil. These are $100, and I use them every day for work. And I said, hey, if you give back my Apple Pencil, I'll build a fairy garden at my house for you. And Morgan said at the time, don't make promises to them. But it wasn't a promise that I didn't intend to keep. I was going to make a fairy garden for them anyway. So I did come to my house and start making a fairy garden for them. But I had to buy another Apple Pencil immediately because I needed it for work. And about a week later, the Apple Pencil, which, I lost it somewhere between my mom's house and my car. Like we were looking, on the grass, on in the rain gutter, not the rain gutter, the street gutter, like anywhere that it could have fallen off just walking to my car. And it wasn't there. But about a week later, it turns up in my daughter's purse. So it's highly strange. But I did get it back and I did make the fairy garden. And, I never make another promise again. Like I'm saying, you shouldn't ever be asked to make a promise. But it is kind of a sign when you've got fae around, whether it's gnomes, fairies, my golem, they've all kind of popped things that I need out of my house, and we've had to find them, or they'll bring them back. So that does happen. Another thing, so I'm gonna share my screen now and show some drawings that I've done of fairies. I know I've shown her before, but this is a green fairy. She's a spirit guide for somebody, and I saw her um, after my friend had told me that she had a green fairy on her spirit team. So I knew exactly who she was. She was very funny. I remember trying to take a mental note about what she looked like, and I was noting that her bridge of her nose was a little bit wider than our bridge of nose is. And I think she got her feelings hurt, and so she changed how she looked really quickly and started looking like anime, but this is what she really looked like. She wears rose petals tied around her body as a little dress. This is a Rinri. She is a blue fairy. She is the first one that I think moved into the fairy garden that I built. She's a great healer, by the way. The blue energy and the green energy, they're usually really good at healers. This is my daughter in a past life. She had red hair. She wore green like leaves as an outfit. Kind of reminds me of Tinkerbell, like in the outfit and everything, but she had red hair. This is an interesting fairy that came around Michael Shaman for one of his healing sessions, and she had very feline structure in her face, her ears, and she wore a leopard print catsuit. I really liked this one. I thought, man, if I was ever a fairy, maybe I'd look like her. This purple one is the spirit guide for another person who I know. And I think she's really pretty. She had more of a human face structure, but just purple. This one is also a spirit guide for somebody I met. She had wings that look like rose petals, and she wore a lot of makeup, which you wouldn't think that fairies would do. This one just popped in one night, and she reminded me a lot of like a Disney princess, kind of like Snow White, I would say, like with little short hair and everything, but the way her face was, it looked like a drawing, like no joke. She did look very animated, and she had these psychedelic colors. Now, this fairy, she is the first one I've ever seen that is 5 foot tall. So the rest of them were small. This is the first time I've ever seen one that was very tall. So she was around, she had a pink aura. She was really great. I didn't catch a name or anything. And so a friend of mine who lives around the corner from me, she actually was taking pictures of her kids running around having like a food fight in her backyard. And this image is sort of a doubled image. So this is one of the kids running with, I think, whipped cream in her hands. And then this here is the image of a fairy that like double imposed on. And this is a film picture. This is not digital. And my friend who took this picture, her name is Melissa Ospina. So I want to give her credit for this. Not to leave out the males. I did see one male fairy. So he was small. I didn't see wings, but the wings for fairies, like they don't really need them because they can run on air anyways. But I think he could have wings if he wanted them. He was a sharp dresser. He looked like he might be confused with a bee, probably. um, he had some wolfy or, dog type characteristics. He was covered with fur. And he was, he had these fancy shoes on and everything. He's really positive, high energy. He's a spirit guide for a girl who was a cheerleader. So he's a real positive energy to have around. Now, because of all the fairies here, I've also had Mother Nature. I've seen her floating around multiple times. She sort of looks over the fairies and nature. And she, I think because I do take care of animals, wild animals. I put out water for the wild animals. I put out, bird seeds, squirrel food. I have bird bath. I do a lot of work to actually kind of try to help take care of the animals in my neighborhood, understanding that, they were here before my house was here. And, I don't want them to go without water or to go without, things they need just because my house happens to be on the same land. So anyways, she has come around, and it's funny because when I saw her, the song Respect from Aretha Franklin, I believe, sang that song, um, popped in my head. So she just wants respect. She wants respect for her and for nature in general and the planet. So I do want to share that that is a message that she would like everyone to know. And I've seen her many times, many times. She can be really quite large. I've seen her up in Mount Shasta once too. She floated over a lake and her reflection was reflecting back at her, and she was just huge. So, anyways, I just wanted to share a couple stories, my encounters with the Fae and Mother Nature. I think they're awesome. But if anyone else has stories to share about the Fae, um, maybe their interactions, hopefully they have positive stories to pass on, and also anything that they do to discern about the beings that they are dealing with. I've learned how to adjust my vibration so I can go through many different dimensions. So I have no problem meeting up with Arcturians and even higher dimensional beings. So I think, being able to adjust your vibration to go through many dimensions is a good tip as well. But anyone else who wants to leave their tips would be greatly appreciated in the comments. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope everyone has a beautiful weekend.